speaking of like the valley and the whatever thing, there was a sermon series that I watched and it was called Planted, Not Buried. And how both, even when, in the same premise of you being buried in something, you also could be planted in something. So when something's brand new, if there's death, you're being buried, but also if it's a seed and it's going to be buried to grow, they're both in the dirt.
Ooh,
like
that's a nugget.
you're both in the darkness, and but it's like when you water something, there's just room for it to grow.
Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast with your host. I'm Zach Heyer.
And I'm Spencer Maxwell.
And today we have a little value add for all of our women out there.
Yeah.
Today we have the privilege of having our wives on the podcast. Tawnee and Stephanie.
Tawnee.
nice little round of applause.
They are the motors.
I was literally just about to say that.
Yeah.
All joking aside, the men that we are today could not be without the women sitting right beside us.
Yes, 100%.
And I'm excited for you guys to be able to see and get a little insight into them as well.
Yep.
So real quick, I'll go through a little run through with Tawnee. And I want you to jump into this too, babe. Tawnee and I have been married now for almost 4 years in May. May what?
9th. I almost said 4th because that's Perry's wedding date.
Right there, right?
Bait and hook.
So one thing with Tawnee is dates are not very important to her.
No. I don't know your birthday. Anyone watching, I don't know.
I'm kidding. But yeah, we'll be together now 4 years.
Yes.
In May.
4 years married.
Yeah.
4 years married.
Five
and a half total. So yeah,
That's so crazy because I feel like it feels longer but shorter. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like I feel like I don't know life before you, but I'm like 5.5 years.
Yeah. I know.
You're my longest relationship now.
Yeah, me too. Congratulations. Yay.
Yay.
So, yeah. Spencer and Stephanie, how long have you guys been married now?
Yeah. So, me and Steph have been together for 4 years dating,
Woo.
3 years married.
Okay.
Next month.
Mm-hmm. A month away.
When's your anniversary?
April 17th.
Oh, he knew that quick.
Okay.
Making me look bad.
It was 4/17/21, and I always remember because I'm a numbers nerd. And 4 + 17 is 21.
Oh.
So that
at
was
you.
like a little helpful.
But
Yeah.
we've been together for 4 years this week.
Mm-hmm.
March 25th, I asked her to be my girlfriend of 2020.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. And so then I bought a ring July 11th, 2020.
Okay.
Asked her to marry me December 14th, 2020.
Okay.
And we got married April 17th, 2021.
There may have been a pregnancy in there.
Yeah.
The dates are murky.
Yeah. Now, 3 kids within 3 years of marriage. Do the math.
Yeah.
They're quick.
Coming out.
And they're 21 months apart. Do the math.
Which, I mean, I do think that will be awesome, though, having like your kids in an age to where they can like kind of be friends.
100%.
You know what I mean?
They're going to be like their own little community.
Exactly.
And it's good for you guys because you like can just pop them out quick and just
Yeah.
get that
Yeah,
like
already are,
hard
yeah.
stage of
Yeah.
life. Like
We're already suffering.
Yeah.
Just get it.
might as well suffer
That's
some
what
more.
I said. I'm like, I'm already tired. So
Yeah.
I might as well just like have another baby. But it's funny to see them interact. They're already their own little like tribe, and like how like Isaiah just bosses him around, but then Noah just kind of does his own thing, and Noah takes off, and Isaiah's just kind of like, hey, come back here. Like it's really bossy.
Hey, come
It's
back
so
here.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of our little timeline. But yeah, we knew we loved each other, basically right at first sight.
Very
Seriously.
quickly.
Yeah. I had to pursue pretty hard though.
Oh,
Ooh,
I didn't know that.
Stephanie playing
Yeah.
a little
You
hard
play-
to
yeah.
get.
Well, to be fair, there's an age gap. So it was very odd for me. I'm
Yeah.
like, I was older 20s, he's young 20s, and I'm like, no, he's a child. I remember telling my mom, like, I don't like him. Mom, I don't like him. And she was like, okay, you don't like him. I'm like, but I don't. Like, just very
You're like
adamant about
trying
it.
to convince her
But then
and yourself.
It was just so, organic and normal. And there was a lot of true love there from the beginning. So I was like, oh my gosh, I love him. Okay. So then
And
4
look
years later,
look where we're
Yeah.
sitting here.
So yeah, man, that's and and you guys can relate to this. It's not all been sunshine and rainbows. Especially in a godly marriage when you two are, two hearts in the kingdom.
Yep.
The enemy likes to test you a little bit.
And I mean, the enemy's won, but when you have a bullhead like me, that also makes it a little tricky because
I feel like specifically for us, we were so young.
we were,
I was
young.
20 when I met him. So I feel like I just didn't have a concept of like life or any experience or wisdom or anything. And I feel like now I look back and I'm like, I was so immature.
Young pup. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and we did a little, I did a little like not helping us out because we got married on a Saturday and we moved to Florida on a Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I had never lived out of my parents' house before.
Yeah.
I still lived at home. I've never moved away.
Yeah, it's a culture shock.
Yeah.
Relationally, location, everything.
For sure.
Wow.
So we went from, dipping our toes in the sand to, a couple miles offshore, jumping in
And
this sink or swim.
Not only was it move to Florida, get married, it was during COVID.
Yeah.
So I had no one except you.
And he was straight commission. And so just the financial
and I didn't
struggles.
have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we moved to Florida, I was like, oh, I'll just figure it out when we get down there, which is so stupid. Like, why did no one tell me? Like, maybe that's not a good idea.
But you know what that brings? Our favorite word.
Grit.
I'm like, what's the word?
Yeah, because I mean, it puts you in a position to where like you don't have a choice. You have to figure it out.
Yeah.
You have to, and if you don't, you don't eat.
I do think that gave me so much more grit than I had.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally, because it gave us something that we had to work together, come together, and work towards a common goal of paying bills. Putting food on the table, right? So there was a lot, like, obviously it wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
But it 1000% carried over to building characteristics that I think that we display today and would not display today if we wouldn't have gone through that.
Yeah.
So, doing it the hard way, it's definitely hard, but, there's a little purpose for the pain.
Yeah, that's kind of how we were. I mean, when we first got married, it was like, okay, we got married in April. I left a salary in February for straight commission, and like we talked about, made no money.
Yeah.
She had a job change to Power Ad, and we had our first kid.
That's so.
And so it's just like
when I started
we
Power Ad,
struggled.
it was like I was 9 weeks postpartum. So like I'm just trying to get a new job, like be at my new job, but I also know like I have a baby that like
you were literally
needs
pumping
me.
in the bathroom.
It's crazy.
I remember.
I remember going to the bathroom just crying and pumping and everything. But what's wild is what that served us in that season, because you didn't make a lot. I was the one that was making more at the time, which was not a lot, but it helped, right?
Yeah.
And like even how we got there, which I don't even know if you want to go down that story, how we even got to Power Ad is crazy.
That's crazy.
Honestly, I say to this day, I'm like, my sole purpose. I mean, I know that it did like help me build characteristics, but my sole purpose was meeting you and you guys. Yeah. Like that's why I was there.
To put this into perspective, we would not be sitting here right now if you two didn't go to
take the same job. Literally the same job.
Exactly.
We got hired, for the same exact job.
Yeah.
Interviewed the same week, and then our boss liked both of us and was like, they're like hiring both,
which is crazy that even happened.
I mean, that could have happened and we not even sit around each other. It could have been two completely different positions and everything, and then I could have not been like eavesdropping on you because we were so close. Where I was like, oh, I think they need help, Spencer. Maybe you can help. And then it ends up being like Zach ends up helping you guys, and then now,
I taught him how to write a real estate contract.
You did,
oh, that's so
dude.
Cute.
I still remember that we were sitting at Chipotle
we were
at the Green
on your laptop. Yeah,
yep, you're exactly right.
It's just that willingness to be like, okay, well, God put us in that spot at the same time at the same company. You were moving from Florida, where you guys already talked about. I was leaving a job that I didn't like. We needed the money.
Yeah.
So we had the willingness to listen and go. And
we drained our savings because of a lawsuit that I was going through. Yeah. So like we had on a rental, And so it was rough.
Just like being in the same place at the same time, talking to each other, having you guys having the willingness to even meet at Chipotle to learn how to write a contract.
Panera was our first time meeting, but yeah.
You're right. It was Panera.
He's like,
you're right.
What was your guys' first day? When's your anniversary?
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
Was it like immediate connection? I never even asked. Like, did you off the bat, you guys were like, oh, this is.
Yeah.
Was it awkward?
We had mutual friends though too, like with Henry.
Yeah, we did. And I think the nice thing is, like, I don't know if you feel this way, but like I don't feel like too awkward with situations. Like I'll go and I'll embrace it. But I think that like our personalities just like click. Yeah. And, you know, getting to see the quality of person that you are in addition to your personality.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Christ, and a lot of what we talked about then is what we still talk about today. Just like kind of like our motivation. Obviously, we were in a different stage, but we talked a lot about that too. And then it's like I kind of helped you through that season.
100%.
And then you helped me through a season. And it was cool. Like we just, oh my gosh. I remember just the venting sessions, and I just felt I left. I was like, dude, seriously, like you just dumped so much on him. And then I helped you back out of, you know, like we were just sounding boards for one another through tough seasons. And now it's like, hey, now we're arriving.
That's so crazy.
To a season together.
Right. Which is so cool. And I think that really ties into, like, in my opinion, nothing's coincidence, right?
No,
it's all structured and planned, and a gift from the Lord. Because really, like, I mean, as basic as you two getting hired for the same position at the same company, which you guys would know this better. That seems kind of uncharacteristic of them to hire two people for the same position.
They loved him so much.
Sit us right next to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think I interviewed at it was like March or April, and I was 7 months. I was 7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Who hires a pregnant girl?
Yeah.
Like, and it was like after my maternity leave, they're like, yeah, you can come in August. So I was months before I even started and very pregnant, to where they're like, yeah, sure, you can start in 3 months, but you can start now, you know. And hearing you talk about Zach, it was like, oh my gosh, my husband's the same way. Oh my gosh, my husband's the same way. And then you guys meet, and then you're like carbon copies.
Yeah.
Blueprints, if you will.
I see what
carbon
you did
copies
there.
of each other.
That's fantastic.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and on that copy paste, you know, type thing, we are very similar, and we do have more of a proclivity towards entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right. And so along with entrepreneurship, as we kind of touched on, there are struggles, right? So I kind of want to get into the beginning stages in you guys' perspectives on what it's like being the wives of entrepreneurs, especially from the start.
Yeah.
When it's not rainbows and butterflies.
Not pretty at
right?
all.
Right. So kind of getting into that, like what was your guys' mindset or thought process when this all first started? Yeah. I'm just curious to get the inside of that.
I remember before we were even dating officially. I mean, we were like, I think this was when I met your parents, our third date. Yeah. We're sitting in his basement, and I was like, we were talking about our future and like what we wanted out of life and all this stuff. And he's telling me, he's like, yeah, like I want to have my own business. I want to have a private jet and like all this stuff. And I'm just sitting here.
I was 19.
I'm like to preface. I'm like literally in school to be a teacher. I'm like, okay, this guy's crazy. I'm like, whatever. I was just like, oh, that's really cool. But like, I didn't really take it seriously.
Yeah.
And then I feel like when we really started dating, I was like, oh, I can see him trying to like break out of his like 9-to-5 mentality. And I feel like it just wasn't pretty.
No,
like
it wasn't.
You were struggling really bad. And so that was 100%. Hard of like, we're both like in the honeymoon phase and so in love, and like having 2019, that was like such a fun year, but you also were going through it because you were like, I have this future set up for myself to like work at Northwestern Mutual, but I don't love it. Like, I don't want to do this. And it's like, we both were kind of like, okay, well, we want to get married soon. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. It was just a lot.
But making like dang near 6 figures though, like you had to put money aside for.
Oh yeah, dude. And it was, I mean, it was giving up
A very bright future.
A very bright future.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
respect you turning down money for.
Well, I mean, dude, I remember this. It was the summer before I interned there. And it was the summer that I was getting ready to start full time.
Yeah.
I remember we were in the Kroger parking lot and I just had like an absolute breakdown.
Yeah.
And I remember I started sobbing and I'm like,
we had only been dating since February.
Yeah.
And I'm just like watching this grown man like losing his mind. And I'm like, I'm just like a little girl. Like, I don't know how to handle this, you know, because this is like real life stuff. I hadn't had to deal with anything in my life, honestly, that was super hard or anything. So I'm just like so naive. I'm like, okay, like get it together.
Right. And it's just like, it was like, I just do not want to do this. Right. And
so it was definitely kind of ugly. Yeah.
It was brutal. But then when I started, luckily, was able to have a pretty good level of success and you know, make a good amount of money to then set us up with a savings for us to go to Florida. So I left there to go to Florida.
Yeah.
So it definitely served its purpose. It was really good, but man, it was ugly to start. And then that doesn't even get
I'm just like trying to put myself back in that time period because it feels like so long ago.
It does.
And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like people meet us now and they're like, oh, you guys have your own business. And we're like, yeah. And they're probably just thinking like, oh, like they've had it so easy and like they don't know the whole backstory.
No clue what it took to get here.
Yeah.
Well, Dan Pena, the $1 trillion man, has a famous saying, and I've told you this before: being successful is like being pregnant. Everybody says congrats, but nobody knows how many times you've been screwed.
I was about to say
screwed.
hallelujah, but I was like, I didn't hear the end of that.
I love that saying. It's hilarious, but it's
and that's the PG
so
version.
True. That's the PG version.
That's the PG version.
So, Tawnee, it was very like you were kind of naive to the situation.
Yeah, I was just naive in general.
You had to have a mindset shift in that moment, though.
I think that like I look back and I don't even see a point that I had a mindset shift. I think it was so gradual of like that happened, his breakdown, he started, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. We were going to move to Cincinnati, get married. I was looking at daycares because I'm like, okay, maybe I'll work in a daycare and see if I do want to pursue early childhood education. So I had no idea. We were just, I think, taking it day by day. And then he came to me, this was like, a few months before we were going to get married. And he looks at me and he's like, I want to move to Arizona.
What?
And I am like,
never heard that.
No. I literally looked at him and we were in my bedroom and I was like, no. And he looked so sad. I mean, he looked like he was about to cry. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Like and this is where like I stick up for myself now, but I just like, I lived to make him happy in the beginning. So I was like, I'll give up whatever. I'll do whatever to make you happy. Yeah. And I think that looking back now, I'm like, I should have had a say. Like I was just like, okay, if this makes you happy, like I'll go wherever you want me to go. So then that changed to Florida and I was just like, you know what, let's do it. And a couple months later we moved and I think we were just taking it day by day.
Yeah.
And then I think Florida was hard because I'm like, I don't even want to be here. Like this isn't what I wanted with my life. Like I'm here just to support him. And I was trying to figure out I worked retail in Florida. I nannied in Florida for a famous TikToker. I don't really know if I should say who it is.
But she has like 12 million followers now.
I follow her and I'm like, I always remember like, that's so cool. Tawnee used to like watch her.
And Tawnee used to like the little girl. She used to change her diapers.
Literally.
That's wild.
Yeah. But that's honestly in Florida when I got the nannying job. I feel like that's when I started being like, okay, this is fun. Like I like my life now. And I was like, I like this. And I felt like you were starting to do better. And then all of a sudden you were like, let's move back home. And I'm like, what?
Whoa. Yeah. Well, I remember because there was a situation that went down with the nannying thing. Oh, yeah. And it seemed like pieces were just starting to come together. Yeah. And I was getting a little bit of like,
and we found a good friend group. We joined a small group in our church and like made really good friends. Like we hung out multiple times a week. Like they just came over and
they lived right down the street.
Had dinner with us all the time. And it was like, it felt like the show Friends.
It was so fun.
It was so fun. But
how long were you in Florida then before you wanted to come back? Okay.
Yeah.
And so things started to seem like they were clicking. right? But the longer that I was at my job, the more that I realized that this probably isn't a good fit. And then I remember coming home one day and she's laying on the bed, like in the fetal position, crying,
sobbing. I was losing my mind.
And I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, well, things went down and they no longer need me as a nanny. And we were like, oh my gosh. Cause that would have been, they were paying her like a sizable amount of money.
And it was so fun. Like I loved it.
Yeah. And that happened. And I was just like, at that point, I was just like middle finger to everyone. I was just like, I am done. And it was probably a month or so after that, it just progressively kind of got worse. I feel like that you were doing a little bit better in terms of like settling in.
I got past like the homesickness and like I feel like I was kind of gaining independence and I was like, I'm okay. Like I can do this, be away from family and whatever.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I needed a group. Like I needed someone besides you because you were all I had for so long. And I'm like, I need like a girlfriend or like someone. And I feel like once I got that, I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
For
Can
sure.
I ask, like when you said you were in a spot where you're like, I'll just do whatever makes you happy. Did you ever have like resentment? Like I'm here because of you.
Oh,
yeah.
110%.
It feels so nice to hear. You admit, because that's why the first thing I thought was like, I felt this before.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way? Is it just me? Like,
yeah. And I think like I always thought in Florida too, like we got married really quick. And I remember looking at him when we were in Florida and I'm like, oh my gosh, I married a stranger. I don't know who this man is. Why did I do this? Like, just like rethinking my whole life. Yeah. And like, I think that now I look back and I'm like, that's so sad because like I love him so much. And I feel like I couldn't picture my life without him now. But I'm like, we had to go through that, you know?
So is it tough for you to like trust because it was kind of like a stranger at that point? Was it tough to trust and support because he was straight commission? You're like, I'm relying on you.
Yeah. I mean, I always knew that he would be successful with whatever he did. So, but it was just more of I think I was just so focused of like, I was still like so close to my family. So I think that like took up most of my mind is I was just always like, I just miss my parents so much. Like, why do I have to be here? You know?
Yeah. And I think what also played a role is I was young and immature. So I didn't handle situations with grace, right? I was,
that's the last thing on your mind is grace.
Yeah. And still like working through it, but I was a complete hothead.
We didn't know how to communicate. We didn't have a good foundation built either. And I think that like you being your personality, he's just so strong-willed and I'm such a pushover. Yeah. So like, I think that's what made the resentment build up is like, I'm just like, I can't speak my mind, you know? If I tried, it got shut down. Yeah. And I feel like now we know how to communicate where it's like, I feel heard. If I have a problem with something, I say it. I'm very blunt now. Yeah. But back then I just like didn't know how to be. And so I feel like that's what makes resentment build up. If you're like keeping things inside and you don't share and you don't know how to communicate.
Unexpressed expectations.
Yes.
Yeah. That's just like the enemy
100%.
To know that like I don't know how specifically the enemy works. Like, I don't know if he knows the potential that you guys have. Obviously, God sees all. God knows all.
For sure.
And I know that the enemy doesn't, but he can see when something's good. And when he's like, okay, they're not doing good. They're away from their family. She's alone. She's resenting him. Let me just put this question in her mind where, you know, you're sitting there like, what did I do? You know, you're questioning something you know that God ordained and you know that God brought you together. So
absolutely.
Freaking enemy, man.
I know.
He sucks.
Yeah,
it is cool though, because I remember when we moved back, that was worse than being in Florida. Our relationship was so much worse.
It was
2021. So that's when I was working at Power Ad.
Yeah.
I don't know if because it was like right when we moved back from like August. No, sorry. When do we move back?
December.
November.
December.
Okay. December until August because we lived with my parents.
We moved back in with her parents.
So that was just rock bottom.
I started in August of 21. I remember you saying like, yeah, we just moved in.
Yes. So when we moved to our apartment, I feel like that's when our life started. We were like, okay, we're like getting on the other side of things.
Yeah.
But living with my parents was rough.
I tell you what, and nothing against like her parents, but
it was us.
That point in time was was the lowest point in my life.
Yeah.
For sure. I have no question
Mhm.
that I was like depressed.
Mhm.
I got fat. I was like,
You gained like 50 pounds, right?
I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I was like,
we looked back at pictures recently and we were both like, who is that man?
I was like,
we
I was
just
a
didn't
big boy. Yeah.
Thick.
Shot it thick. Yeah. And it was a horrible time.
Well, we couldn't
in my
like
life.
communicate. When you live with people, it's like if you're feeling something, like you can't say it unless you're like, hey, let's like go in the bedroom and talk this out, which you don't
Especially
do.
with your parents. Like your roommates. You're like, hey mom, dad, we're gonna go.
Well, also
Right.
as a man, it's like, well, if we move back to Ohio, I should be able to buy you a house.
Yes.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
Right.
I think your pride
your
and
pride
ego,
took
Oh,
yeah, it was a dent to the pride.
Oh, it was a bullet hole to the pride.
yeah.
I think it was hard because like in Florida, you were happy like with your situation.
Mhm.
Like you're like, I'm in Florida, I'm so happy, and I wasn't. We moved
Yeah.
back. I'm like, I'm home. Like my
Yeah.
life, I have meaning again. I have purpose. So I'm like, so happy.
Yeah.
And he's the most depressed he's ever been. So I feel like that's kind of where it was
Yeah.
really hard.
So how was that for you? Like biblically, you have to serve your husband.
Mhm.
I just
during that
feel
time
like
period.
we weren't even living like husband and wife back
Hmm.
then because
Oh,
we were
no.
with my parents.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
plus I got a job at Power Ad, so I'm commuting an hour. So like I didn't see him very much, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that started, I think, when we moved into our apartment of like,
Yeah.
okay, we really need to get back on track here and like do things the right way. And
I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah.
That's when we were up in the up and up when,
Yeah.
and then
I was going to say, I remember at this point, I literally had, and like you said, the resentment. I feel like resentment's so hard because you're like, I don't want this resentment, but I do at the same time because I don't want to like let them off the hook. Do you know
It's
that
almost
feeling?
like justified.
Yes. It's like,
You're,
I
like,
want to
feeling
feel
it.
it. Even though it's painful, it's like, I want to feel it.
Mhm.
And I remember we just moved to our apartment and I prayed to God and I'm like, please just like take this away. Like take this resentment away. And ever since then, I have not felt 1 ounce.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that could
That's
only
cool.
be God because I had it for so long. And I just said one prayer. And it seriously, I'm not kidding, just took it away. Gone.
Mhm.
Because like while he's trying to get his startup and while he's trying to like come into his role of like I'm supposed to be the provider, you're the one that's providing.
Yeah, that
and
was
you're the one
really hard.
oh,
Yeah.
that was oh my gosh, talk
We
about
seriously,
feeling like a POS.
yeah.
our worst fight ever to this day, like we've never fought like this before, stemmed from that. Because can I tell the story?
I don't care.
Okay. So like sometimes I joke about things and I don't realize that they're like a sensitive spot.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I joke and I'll say something and he freaks out and I'm like, what did I do? Like I have
Yeah.
no idea. So we're at our friend's house. It's 4th of
Austin
July.
and Leah's.
We're Austin and Leah's. And they're having this huge party and we're still living with my parents at this point. And we're playing this game and I don't even know. There was like fake money involved. And I'm like, oh, look at me. Like I'm the breadwinner. Like I have all the money. And this man
Set me
What?
off.
and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just like in my mind, I'm like, I didn't think because I don't think
Yeah.
like a man. So I'm like, to me, it was just a joke. Like
Yeah.
there was no like meaning behind it, whatever. Because like honestly, I was happy to do it.
Mhm.
Like I knew, like he told me like his plans and what he wanted to do, and I saw him every day making like actively working on it. So I
Yeah.
had honestly that joke was just a joke, and I could tell like you know they're mad, they're not saying anything, but you can feel their body like tense
Mhm,
up, and I'm like
mhm.
crap, like that was
You see
not
it
the
on
right
your
thing.
face.
That was not
Yeah.
the right thing to say. And so I remember pulling him aside, and he was so angry.
I kind of went nuclear.
He went nuclear, and I'm just
Yeah.
sitting here like, I'm so sorry. Like I honestly didn't know like that
Yeah.
would hurt your feelings that bad. We literally spent the night apart. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like I went home, my sister came pick me up, and he went to his parents' house. I think we were apart for almost 2 days.
Mhm.
And I texted him, or maybe called you, I don't remember. And I was like, come home. Do you remember that?
I do remember
Yeah.
that, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Zach's really mad. He's
Yeah,
sitting here
I'm
like,
like,
I remember it fondly. No,
don't tell
I'm
me to
just
come
kidding.
home.
Yeah.
No,
I
it
ain't
literally
coming
feels
home.
like a different life. Like I've not
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
it doesn't even feel like my life when I talk about it. But
Oh, yeah.
I remember because we were in my literal childhood bedroom, like where we lived in my childhood bedroom, which
Yeah.
is just so embarrassing. But
Entrepreneurship ain't always rainbows and
Right.
butterflies,
No.
people.
Yeah.
And so I'm like texting him, like, just come home, like we have to figure this out.
Yeah.
Because I was like calling my friends and I'm like telling them about it, and they're like encouraging me. They're like, you guys are one. Like you
Yeah.
need to act like one. Don't separate. So I'm like, all right. So I remember I was about to get in bed and I went downstairs and filled up his water and put it on the nightstand. And he comes home and he's like just so happy that I filled up his water that he wasn't mad at me anymore. He was like, that is so thoughtful. And I'm like, that's all it freaking took. Like, we spent days apart and all I had to do was fill up your freaking water.
Oh my God.
Seriously, like you were like, I think it was like the fact that we had such a big fight and we were so angry, and the fact that I still did something
It was
small
just
like
a small
that.
gesture to show, you know,
And I look back and like, that is just the definition of marriage.
That's
No,
how
it
I
is.
am.
It
Like
is.
dinner every day, like having dinner made for you is like,
Yeah.
it means the world to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
It really does.
Acts
Yeah.
of service.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just kind of like the, you know, because that was kind of similar for us too, where she was the breadwinner,
Mm-hmm.
and it does, man, it hurts your pride because you just feel like you're bringing so much baggage when you're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing the opposite. You're supposed to be fixing, providing, protecting, and it's just like when you're in a season of doing none of it. But to
Mhm.
have a wife who's just so happy to serve,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, and it was such a blessing.
Yeah.
It really was.
I think it helped our dynamic too, because like I worked at Power Ad and then I started my own business, and I almost
Yeah.
think like, not that you didn't respect me, but I think it made you look at me like, oh wow, like she act like,
Yeah.
you know, she can get it done.
100%.
And I think that helped our dynamic.
I could not
So I
agree
think
more.
it was supposed to happen that way. You know,
Yeah.
like God
Yeah.
knew what he was
You
doing.
guys-
Yeah.
You said you started being like, you were 20 years old, you had no job, and you're like, I'll go wherever you want. And then when you were trying so hard to be successful, and it didn't go without like a lack of trying,
Yeah.
you know, but it's
Yeah.
like just possibly the Lord humbling you and also empowering you to be
100%.
like, girl, you got your own
Mhm.
company and you can do this and you will do all those things.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, it's shifting
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it's going to what it's supposed to be. But yeah, I
Y-
think it can be really hard. I know you'll get sensitive sometimes. I don't know if you ever feel this way, but there were days where Spencer is just striving, and he'll literally sit there and be like, I feel like a failure today. And I'm like, do you see everything you've done
Yeah.
today? But he'll say those words because,
Yeah.
again, it's
the enemy.
For sure.
I feel like a failure.
Yeah,
What?
well, like when we got together, because man, we were, like I said, we were struggling. But like even like with no money in our bank, and it's just like bank accounts going negative every week,
Mhm.
and like we got to figure out how to, you know, feed Isaiah and feed each other, and you know, like I told her like, I'm the best investment you will ever make in
Mhm.
your
I
I
life.
remember
love
you saying that.
Yeah, I was
Say
like,
that
Yeah.
all the time. Like,
I-
you remember when I said that?
But yeah, no, seriously, because it's like now, like you guys talk about the up and up. Now it's like finally, like
Yeah.
there's
Mhm.
light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that she had to sit there and just like, you know, not get any income from me, and to just take my frustrations every day, because like I
Mhm.
was bringing those burdens home. Now we have a saying that says "no leftovers."
Yeah.
You know, when you walk in the door, no leftovers to each
Yeah.
other or to your kids.
Yeah.
But man, we are giving each other leftovers.
Oh, yeah.
Especially just because I was like, I mean, I was so easily offended
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my wife took the brunt of that
Right.
in that season of life.
Yeah.
You know, she had the impatient version of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that God uses those, and I said it earlier, but I always love the saying, like, there is a purpose for the pain.
Yeah.
Right. And Steph, you had mentioned, I can't speak for you, but for me, I think for us to sit here today and have the dynamic that we have today,
Mhm.
that was what was necessary.
Mhm.
Because for me, as a young bull, I had a crazy ego,
Mhm.
right? I thought that I knew all. I thought that I'm invincible, that I can be successful in whatever I did. Coming out from Northwestern Mutual, I thought, man, whatever I touch
You're
turns
going
to
to run the world.
turns
Yeah.
to gold, right? And when you get smacked in the face
Dude.
and you hit rock bottom, I think that was what was
Yeah.
required of me,
Yeah.
not only to be successful in the future, but to be a godly man and a godly husband, and someday be a godly father.
Mhm.
Because that attitude that I possessed then would have done nothing but
Mhm.
harm to the people that I'm surrounded
Right.
by.
Mhm.
So I think that there was absolutely a purpose for it. And I think that our marriage is where it's at today
Mhm.
because of that time period.
That's
Mhm.
so cool.
So,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it's interesting because all the characteristics you said that you had, Spencer, same thing.
Mhm.
And to add on to that, because I think those are all amazing characteristics to have. Like, because you guys have those is what makes you a good entrepreneur, to have that grit and that grind to get up and I'm
Yeah.
going to do it every single day. There's some people that are just like, no, I think I'm just going to go and play
To
the
be able to
safe
work and
route.
acquire
Yeah.
nothing in the moment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But in the same premise, like Spencer had all those things and he was surrounded by successful people at Marine Country Club. So that's
Yeah.
where we met, was the Marine Country Club. And he's in the men's locker manager, where it's just you are catering to millionaires every day. And Spencer I remember seeing him. I remember at the time I was a bartender, and so it's just we're in proximity to the front door. He would be at the front door in like his suit jacket and everything, and shaking hands with millionaires, and they know exactly who he is, and he remembers their name and talks to them about stuff, and he's just like shooting the crap with them, and he had that desire to be what he was surrounded by.
Mhm.
So you're in a room serving these people, and I just remember him being like, "Someday we're going to be members, and someday we're going to be this," and those might be things that actually happen,
Yeah.
but at such a young age to be so, maybe envious is the word, or to be so pushed and motivated by people who we didn't see their stories. We didn't
Yeah.
see their first years
Yeah.
and stuff.
Mhm.
But I remember in the beginning being like, okay, like I never wanted any of that ever,
Mhm.
like I remember just being like, I'm fine with just you. And to have
That's how I was.
those pressures
Yeah.
of just, this money or this business or all these things. But
Yeah.
to be submerged around everybody else who already has that was a cool motivator, but it's sometimes, I think, a struggling point for you, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Only you can speak to that, but
That's
yeah,
the
it was-
comparison.
yeah,
Mhm.
it is a little crazy, but yeah, to see people in their cars and they're golfing in the middle of the day and they're spending all this money and buy him this, and Spencer's just like, his eyes are huge and he's just
Yeah.
like,
For
I
sure.
want that,
For sure.
This reminds me so much of like The Love and Respect. Have you read that book?
Mm-mm.
It talks
We
about
haven't.
how women need love and men need respect. And it just shows, like you said, like, I don't need any of this.
Mhm.
And that's how I felt. I'm like, I married you because I was in love with you, and like, that's all I care about. I don't care if we're living in this house forever and driving our same car. Like, I don't care as long as I feel that you love me. Where I think men, God puts it in them. Like, they need to feel respected. And I think that that's just like a cool example of that, and I think it can, when it gets out of whack, I think that's when it can go south of like, wanting things you can't have and things like that. But I think at the root of it, it's a desire to feel respected by everybody.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think
Yeah.
encouragement from the mouth of a woman is huge
Mhm.
in like the heart of a man.
Well, it breathes life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's life for a man when we get encouragement from our wives, especially in our scenarios where it's
Mhm.
like every day, you can like wake up and lose everything,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and you can work and get nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's just like to constantly, be on that hamster wheel. When you have encouragement from your wife, it makes you just want to run harder and run harder and run harder.
Mhm.
Like
Keeps you going.
Yeah. Like when she encourages me and when she's like on me to, just do better. And, it's just like, it motivates me even more.
Mhm.
Well, and I think that especially, and I can speak for Tawnee, of when it came from like, hey, I hear what you're saying in terms of your goals, to, hey, I support you in your goals,
Mhm.
to now I'm with you
Mhm.
in your goals.
Yeah.
That's so
Right.
cool.
And that journey is awesome to know that, like, not only is she supportive in it and supports me in it, but like we're doing it together.
Yeah.
And
That's
to see that evolution of not understanding any of it
Yeah.
and being like, oh yeah, that's cool, to now owning the agency together
Mhm.
and everything that we're doing in business, and like having conversations. We're going to client meetings together.
Mhm.
We're like having conversations on how we can grow and scale the business. We're like
Yeah.
going to do hiring meetings together. Like, it's just,
And if anybody knew me before, I'm the last person to be doing this.
You didn't even want to pick up the phone to
So
call people.
I wouldn't
to get
even order a
clients.
pizza.
Which is
Yeah.
the irony, because she was a receptionist at Power.
Yeah.
So
I was desperate for
I-
money.
Yeah.
I kind of want I want something from each of you. Like, what if there's a word or a specific topic? What would that be for like this is what I struggled with while I watched my husband trying to make it or trying to make it build success. What was like the one thing you struggled with while seeing that?
Probably fear, like fear in the just like fear when it comes to like security. So we both talked about being like the breadwinner. Okay, you made more money than the other person, but also in my mind, I don't know if you did it gracefully, but I was just very much like, why do I have to be the one? Why do I have to be the one? And I remember getting questions in my head, like from the enemy, like, shouldn't he be the one that's doing this? And instead of being supportive, because that's what you needed was support and respect. And I was more fearful and wanted more security, that I didn't give that. So then you didn't have anything to accept that. And then you were, in your own, I wouldn't say a full on, like, what did you say? You were in like a depression or you gained weight and all that stuff. He was just more of like in a fearful, and sometimes you were angry, and sometimes it was just
I was an angry person,
but he was also just like grinding all the time to where it was just like I never saw him. And when he was gone, it's for a good cause, but I also still didn't see my husband, which more resentment grew and more like more fear came, and that's just what the enemy wants to do.
Fear.
I can't even imagine
fear the discomfort.
Like everything that you're saying, I'm like, oh yeah, I resonate with that, but like feeling that when you just had a baby.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say.
Like you're like, I'm the breadwinner, but like I'm pumping in the bathroom.
Being a first-time mom, first-time parent in general, it's a culture shock. It's everything is different, and it's the most beautiful, amazing thing. I am obsessed with our children, but also in that same premise, there is a reason why it's God first, and then it's your marriage, and then it's your child. So when you have this fear, you don't see your husband, and you're just trying to make it for your own kids and stuff. That gets jumbled to where I'm not trusting the Lord first. I'm taking care of my child first. And then I'm kind of going to God, but I'm kind of scared. And then Spencer and I, like Spencer was definitely third, and our marriage felt that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's I keep saying it, there's a reason why children are third. And that doesn't mean, oh, my kid's crying and my husband needs me, I'm going to go to my husband first. But it's just the order of submission to God and his reverence to then my husband and that's also not that you are to take advantage of that. Like you're not supposed to be like, make me a sandwich. I love cooking him dinner. I truly do. I love providing. It's a biblical aspect of being a wife, but also when you have a child and you're just so scared and you're like, do we have enough diapers? Do we have this? And you have childcare, and then you're going to work and you are pumping.
And the paychecks are small and your husband brings you nothing.
He's not around, and it was just like this perfect tornado of just fear and security. So that's, I guess, how I would.
Fear of the unknown, but more so fear of being, the inconsistency or the being like not comfortable.
Yeah. And then looking back at that, I think, again, we had to go through it. Yeah. We had to go through it. And then by no means do I think that we're in the clear, but we definitely don't argue. I don't have the fear like we used to. And,
that fear has turned to trust, and I've seen that because once again I told her like I'm going to be the best investment. I think she's starting to see that now because the fruits of my labor are coming.
There was somebody that told us, who was it? How you said how he was like, oh, I want a private jet and I want this and I want that. There was someone that told us, how you change as a wife. When you change and you hear all these things, you change that. Okay, how you change the how to a wow. So you're like, wow, that's really great. Not like, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Like you don't have any time. You don't have this, because the first thing he feels is doubt. So when you hear that, how are you going to do that? You change it to, wow, that's great. And you know that the Lord's going to change him to wherever it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's trusting in his power and stuff.
So like to sum up in one word, Tawnee, like your biggest thing as you watch Zach struggle, he's angry, he's, going through it and he's grinding and he's getting nothing back. And he's probably not, because as men, we serve our job first. Like, let's be honest, like that's what takes us out is who we identify with our work.
Right.
So like while he's doing that, like what was your biggest struggle as a supportive wife of a entrepreneur and such a hard worker?
I think that the first word that came in my head was loneliness, because I feel like, I don't know, we were just like, I remember your dad, because his dad's a pastor, and I remember he did our pre-marriage and he's like, why are you getting married? And I remember just thinking, because I love him. Like like I said, I'm only 20. Like I didn't know. I was like, I'm with him because I love him. Like the feeling, like that's why we got married, I think, because we were like, well, these feelings that we have. And I think when we moved to Florida, I was like, oh, like that's gone. So now what, you know, like I don't know what to do with this. So I think just like that loneliness of like, okay, well now like I don't have him, or like the security of our relationship being good. And I think that's what made me spiral.
Yeah.
Because like now if we're fighting, I'm like, whatever, like, you know, we'll move past it. It's fine. Like I don't feel, I feel secure, where then before it's like I would spiral all the time.
And the loneliness probably came from doubt of like,
yeah,
you know, just being so fresh in marriage.
I think I just like didn't even care either. I'm like, well, like, just get a normal job. Like I'll get a normal job. We'll live happily ever after. Like I didn't care about the money. I was like, I just want your love. Like that's it. And I think that that's what was so hard for me to accept, is like, I'm not getting that anymore. And so it's like, that's gone. Everything that I built this marriage on was gone. And I think the reason is because that's not what marriage is supposed to be about, you know? And I think people told us that, but I don't think we realized like marriage isn't built on feelings. And I think now like we didn't have a honeymoon stage. Like when we were dating, we did, but not when we got married. Yeah. And I'm like, now I feel like I look at him and I'm like, oh, I feel the honeymoon stage. Like I feel what it was supposed to feel in the beginning.
Years later.
Yeah. And we get like, we get along so well, and we're like so in love now. And I'm like, I have that and I have security, which I think is so much better than just having those feelings that are fleeting, you know?
Well, I and only you can speak to this, but I think the big change was at first, your identity was in me.
It was for 100%.
So whenever your identity is in me, I'm a human.
Yeah.
I have flaws. Yeah. I will fail. When you replaced your identity in me with your identity in Christ, and that made you a more confident woman. So that way, when you were talking about how you wouldn't say boo to me, now, like, I gotta like shut it down, like, because you're coming at me, right?
I was gonna say a bad word. I can't.
I remember the first time we were living with my parents, and I would think I was in the shower and you were on the toilet. This is so funny. I literally have this clear image.
She's setting the scene.
I am like wrapped up in a towel. I walk out to the toilet. We were fighting about something, and I look at him and I'm like, hey, no, like this will not fly, blah, blah. Like I'm like going off, like the first time ever. And we had been married for over a year. Like that just shows I never said anything to him. And I remember he looks up at me from the toilet. He's like, okay. Like he was just like, what's
the
happening?
most vulnerable spot you could get. You're like, you are not going to talk to me like that. He's like, okay.
An argument on a toilet.
I remember that as clear as day.
That's funny.
So fear and loneliness, those are two very low places. Those are two big struggling words, I guess. So I kind of want to flip the script. So it's like, you know, now that we're kind of on the other side of things, now we can talk about the highs. Finally, right? Years later.
I promise everyone it gets better.
Yes. But it is, you know, back to Dan Payne is saying, the G-rated version. So I guess give me a high. Like, you know, I don't want to make this all about us, but like give us a high of like, you know, of being an entrepreneur's wife now that things have come to light. I don't know whoever wants to go first. If there's a word or kind of like
I don't even, what I said earlier, like I just feel like we are genuinely best friends now. And the fact that we, like he said, we're building this together and it's so fun. Like we literally will leave our meetings, like with you, we'll leave a meeting and we're like, this is our job. Like this is so fun. We love our life so much. And I'm like, I couldn't even have dreamt of this when I was, you know, 20. Like this, like I didn't even know life could get this good.
Yeah.
And I think that just stems from like what we went through, and the fact that now I'm like, I feel so secure. Like I'm like, I know he'll never leave me. I know that he loves me, and I know all these things. And I think women just need that sense of security. And even like with our jobs, it's like I'm the type of person that like I think worst case scenario. So I'm like, okay, what happens if my business fails?
Yeah.
What happens if like this goes away? Like I just have to think that way to like prepare for it. So when I think like that, I'm like, you know, we'll figure it out. Like if our business failed, I'm like, I have full trust and faith in the both of us. Yeah. We'll figure something else out. And so I don't live with that constant anxiety where like when I first started my business, I would have literally a stomach ache all day because I'm like, if this doesn't work, like what
you had to go through the anxious moments where, you know, you guys were going through the crap because he was trying to pursue something larger than just a 9-to-5.
Yeah. And now I have full trust in him. I have full trust in us. I'm like, I know that even if it does fail, anything that he does, if it fails, anything that I do, if it fails, we will figure it out.
Business owners, Do you know the value of creating a strong brand and realize social media is one of the best ways to do it, but don't have the time to stay consistent or know where to start? Do you need a modern website or an eye-catching logo? You only get one first impression and you've got to make it count. No matter if you're looking for a website, a logo package, or if you need a professional to craft and implement a custom social media strategy to create a recognizable brand and drive sales, the Z&T agency has got you covered. Odds are you've probably been thinking about these things to some degree, but didn't know a solution. Or maybe this is all new to you and you're interested in hearing more. Either way, we'd love to talk to you. Reach out to zach.hire@theztagency.com to book your consultation call today.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's just such a freeing feeling of like, I'm not dependent on this one business working or these two businesses working. Like we'll get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's
for sure.
marriage. Like you need to have a life partner where you're like, we're okay. Like no matter what life throws at us, we will figure it out together.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
yeah, what would you say? That's a good
I
high.
don't know. I think that there's just excitement now.
I
There's
like
excitement, and in the same premise, I think that it's probably the opposite of like fear because you don't know what's going to happen. Now we're like, we don't know what's going to happen. He'll be on a phone call and he'll be like, they're ready to develop, or they want to do this, or hey, I think we're going to do this. This person's under contract. Like there's just such an excitement surrounded by the unknown that is the complete other side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I was
where
like, what's the unknown? Now it's like,
Yeah.
holy crap, change is coming. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's
Mhm.
also not saying it's something you still struggle with, but I think maybe men in general, or maybe just specifically you, I think you think it's in your hands. And I wasn't a praying wife in the beginning. And now like it'll be a normal thing that he'll wake up and I'm just like laying there, like praying over him, or you
My
know,
nose surgery, I would literally wake up like 3 times, like during my
Aw.
naps, and I could just hear her like whispering.
Or if
Aw.
With a
I'll like
hand on
wake
me.
up and I'm weird. I discern things and sometimes I hear things. There was a light flickering in our house and I literally was like rebuking the enemy and it was like, it's electricity, but it's fine. But I was just like, you're not in my house.
enemy is
like,
AES.
I know. Yeah, not in my house.
Literally.
Not myself, not my husband, not my children. But
That's amazing.
the excitement I think I get, that it's now
The
there is
fear
a full
has
confidence.
flipped.
There's a full confidence there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not by, and it's not to say it's because you've proved to me that you can take care of us, but I know the Lord's going to take care of us. And I know with how hard you work and just the relationships you have with people, like he'll be like calling people and for a lunch, not for betterment of yourself, but
Yeah.
you really want to see how they're doing.
Yeah.
And then they see that because of that, they want to do business with you. And so it's just exciting. I mean, we come home and it's like, sometimes there's like a brand new tractor and not tractor. We call it a
Trailer.
tractor. It's I'm saying
Oh, the John Deere.
It's a lawnmower.
Yeah.
And we call it a tractor
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Isaiah's
yeah.
obsessed with tractors. He's
Yeah.
like, Daddy, tractor. So it's like, but even that happened because of a memory you had as a kid. So it's all
Yeah.
intentional. And like I said, we're not through it completely.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, you
we're,
guys
like,
also
right
have
there.
3 kiddos, so that adds
Yeah.
a whole nother.
Insane.
Like
It's
we
so
can
cool.
focus on each other, and that's it. And I think when you have a kid, or
Yeah.
multiple kids, it's so different.
Learning
It
how to
is.
parent and be married, and
I
it's
can't
it's a
imagine.
lot, but it's
Yeah.
like, so kind of like the theme seems to be like the highs all came from the struggles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
like we have these such high highs, and both of our relationships have progressed so quickly because of the crap that we all went through.
Mhm.
For sure.
You know?
In an analogy that now I use to help me in those times is the mountains and the peaks, right? When you're on the mountaintop and you see another mountaintop, a bigger mountaintop
Yeah.
that you want to, reach to see the view, right? What do you have to do? You're not ascending, you're descending
Mhm.
down into the valley. You got to go down and then you have to hike back up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so growth is in the struggle.
Mhm.
Like
yeah.
that's where your skills sharpen. That's where you become more mature. That's where you gain experience.
Mhm.
It's not from the highs. It's from the failures. It's
Yeah.
from the tough times that creates the grit to get you to the next mountain peak.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will 100% say like the reason we have gotten to those peaks is because of Steph. Like I was ready to give up on everything,
Mhm.
and she continued to pray. She continued to stay with it. and encourage and all that and keep me going. And so like now she and the boys are my why. But like I was just ready to give up. I was on everything.
You'll
everything.
still have some days when you're like, I could just go and do this. But I know that like the what is it, public adjuster thing or whatever, it just kind of randomly came out.
Adjuster.
And it might be more secure, but I know you'd be unhappy.
Yeah.
And so just knowing that, like, there's a lot of things you could do, but is that your purpose? Is that what's in what you're supposed to do? Speaking of like the valley and the whatever thing, there was a sermon series that I watched and it was called Planted, Not Buried. And how even when, in the same premise of you being buried in something, you also could be planted in something. So when something's brand new, if there's death, you're being buried, but also if it's a seed and it's going to be buried to grow, they're both in the dirt.
Woo!
Like
That's a nugget.
you're both in the darkness, but it's like when you water something, there's just room for it to grow. So
Planted,
it's so cool.
not
dude,
buried.
that reminds me of the whole
episode title.
The whole
Seriously,
No,
whoa.
seriously, planted, not buried. Man, that's good.
and it's
a great
that brings me to like we keep talking about analogies, but it's so good. Like the bamboo tree, how literally you plant bamboo and you have to water it literally every single day. And if you miss a day, it dies. And it doesn't grow above the ground for 5 years. And then all of a sudden it takes 9 weeks. It grows 90 feet.
Oh my god!
Yeah. The same pastor did it. It's called a bamboo season or a bamboo season.
Yeah.
Where in one day, if you do all this work, it grows over 4 feet. Yeah.
And that is
crazy.
marriage. It's marriage. It's marriage in an analogy.
Huh?
It's like
marriage.
you're like seriously, like you're pouring into each other.
Yeah.
You're watering one another, and you just like you're like, when is this thing going to grow?
Yeah.
That is entrepreneurship. Yes. Could you go get a 9 to 5? Could you go be a provider? Could you have stuck in a place where you were miserable but making great money, but then by the world standards, you're a good husband? And it's like instead you just sacrifice, and women have to surrender, and they have to sacrifice. We are giving up stuff. They're giving up stuff, and it's ugly and it's a mess. But like I said yesterday, it turns into a beautiful mess.
Oh,
We're still a mess, but at the end, just like the bamboo tree, when it finally starts to grow, then we become a beautiful mess.
yeah. Because a lot of times we see all these people like in Moraine Country Club and all that kind of stuff. We're seeing the final product.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
We're not seeing all the work that went into it. And we see, and this was enticing for me and sounds like enticing for you, entrepreneurs are the highest paid people on this planet.
Yeah.
The richest people in the world are entrepreneurs. The people that have full autonomy over their schedule are entrepreneurs. The people that are, buying rounds at the bar and all that kind of stuff are probably entrepreneurs. And the dad and mom that are at their kids' baseball game, basketball game, dropping them off from school, picking them up from school, all this kind of stuff are probably entrepreneurs because
that was my parents.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
were at every single.
It's less about the money for me, and it's more about the freedom. Like, I told Steph, I was like, my definition of freedom is being able to drop off and pick up the kids and make their sporting events.
Yeah.
That's my definition of freedom.
Yeah.
You know, which is why ultimately, we want to run our own businesses out of our house.
That's my why
Totally.
too. I'm like, I just seeing life like as an entrepreneur. I'm like, I don't think I could ever go back.
Oh,
I don't know what I would do if I had to go back to a 9 to 5.
for sure. Oh, no, I totally agree. And
It's also a whole new motivation because like when you're working for someone else, it's like you're working for their why. And like that, you know what I mean? And when it's your own why, it's like I can work twice as hard, but there's purpose in it and I want to do it.
100%.
But when you're working for someone else, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to make 50 grand if I do this Excel sheet. I'm going to make 50 grand if I don't. So why do I have to finish it right away?
Exactly.
Like you just lose that motivation over time.
Yep. Their why versus your why. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
I think it's just how you're ingrained, like your DNA or whatever.
Ah,
Just like
yeah.
because
Blueprint.
there are some people, who want to control that schedule.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing I think as an entrepreneur, you guys probably maybe struggle with. I know he'll struggle with is like the time. So he's always on his phone, and he has to be. And in the beginning, it was very much like just put the phone down. Like,
Right.
what is going on? And setting boundaries is something that he's getting better at. But you know, versus you could go to a job and, you know, you go in 9 to 5 and then you leave, you don't think about it, you know, you're going to get the money, you know, but it's still like, is that what you want?
Yeah.
And I know how you're wired and like you would go nuts. Like even at Moraine, was there still a schedule and a salary? Yes, but every day was different. Every person was different. Everything that you did, every golf outing and thing you had to set up for was different. And
now we're throwing golf outings.
now you're throwing golf outings.
Nice plug.
So it's cool.
Working for the man, now becoming the man.
Oh man, I hope so.
So we had touched on it a little bit, but I really want to get into a little bit about being the parent side of things.
I was literally, that was on the tip of my tongue. I want to know too, like having a baby, like right when you get married. I want to know what that was like.
I think, I mean, I obviously don't know any other way.
That's true.
It was really hard, but at the same time, like I'm obsessed with my children.
Yeah.
The thing,
like, I
the
don't
biggest
know
thing,
how that would even be. I think I'd be just so bored.
Yeah.
Just me and you. Like,
well,
what are we even doing?
no, but also that's also what we've talked about. That's been our struggle is we've never been a married couple.
Yeah.
You've been mom and dad.
We've been mom and dad. And we've never had a, like when I hear people get married, like my number one advice is just enjoy each other, you know, cause like, you know, once again, like we didn't know how to communicate at the same time of being parents. We didn't know how to live together while we were being parents. Like we went through all these marriage struggles while having to be good parents. And so, I don't want to take away from the beauty of it, but it definitely was hard to, learn how to be married.
Yeah.
Cause like you guys talked about all your struggles and it was like, we had those struggles
but you
too.
had a baby.
Yeah. Not saying it was any worse, but like, you know, throw a kid into it when you don't know how to communicate, when you're just like angry, like as a dad, like I was angry every day.
Yeah.
It does make it harder.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It makes it harder.
Well, in the beginning as a mom, like you can try to prioritize your husband, but naturally like your baby's life is dependent on you.
Well, especially when your husband is giving you nothing to respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Like she's supposed to respect me, but it's like, I wasn't a good husband.
Right.
It's like, how is she supposed to respect me when I'm not a good husband? And then it just snowballs. And so, the kid came first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's definitely a new pressure. I don't know how people do it without Jesus. I really don't. We struggled even with Jesus, you know, because we didn't put him first or each other first. So, you know, it's been difficult, but like, it's the most beautiful thing in the world, and I'll never say anything else against it. You know, I don't even know how to answer that question because I don't know the other side.
Yeah, that's
true.
But
I just see, I think in hindsight, I see hard work and, you know, adversity, but I see such beauty in the middle of it. You know, I think we were drowning so much that I definitely didn't get to appreciate Isaiah to the level that I think I could have. Noah's different, you know, every kid's different. And so we were in a little bit of a better spot. Because like when you find out about Noah, we were ecstatic and so excited. When you find out about Isaiah, we're
scared.
When you're the older sibling, your parents are broke.
Yeah.
When you're the younger sibling, you grow up and your parents are trillionaires.
Right. So I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think from both parties, you on your front and you on your front, do you think having kids has made your entrepreneurial journey more difficult?
More difficult? Well, that's more of a you thing. I don't know.
Well, and also, but also for you, because like if he's gone and stuff, you know,
I'm a single mom.
100%. There are some days,
and so this is a question to both of you because it affects both of you.
Yeah, people enjoy their Saturday morning coffees and their PJs. It's like, hey, you know,
that's us.
Daddy's got showings. Daddy's gone until 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And she has them for all that time.
Right.
And so, there's some days where she is, a single mom, even if I am present.
Yeah. And I don't say that as a knock to single moms. I have a couple friends that are single moms and stuff. And it's so hard. I don't even know how they do it all the time. But, you know, especially during like basketball season in the past, he'll be gone 5-6 nights a week. So it's like I'm picking them up. They don't see him before bedtime. He's exhausted. He comes home and then there's like no time for me. So then instead of I'm either lonely or I'm angry because I'm like, what about me? And it's like, you should be grateful. And so it was really difficult. But yeah, I think that comes with entrepreneurship and parenthood is just sacrifice.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I should have said was becoming a mom, becoming a parent. It's just everything's different. It's not about you at all. Your sleep schedule, how they eat, when he needs to eat, when the house is, needs to be clean. It's just you die
But
to
you're
self.
doing all that like while I'm, taking phone calls.
Yeah.
She's like, kids, quiet down. Dad's
So
on a phone
I'm
call.
like, Daddy's on the phone, and he'll like get real quiet, and then he hangs up and he goes crazy because he knows
funny.
he
Yeah.
can.
That's
So,
funny.
but she struggles because I think the biggest struggle for us being parents, and like sometimes, like I said, even when I'm present, I'm not present
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
I'm still taking care of stuff. And so she has to recognize that. I know it upsets her, but then she has to, kind of swallow that and then like
Yeah.
go be a mom. So
Yeah.
it's tough for her because she kind of gets put on an island a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Mhm.
definitely a lonely place, but at the same time, like if all that was taken away, if Spencer was taken away, my marriage, my kids, like everything, like I'd be like, what about, I would have a different purpose and stuff. But like all of the things that stress me out and make me like, I complain about sometimes, like if you were to remove those things, like I would be so unhappy. And I don't want to say incomplete because obviously Christ makes me complete, but it
Yeah.
goes back to identity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How you were talking about that. And I think early on, and even sometimes still, I'll struggle with the identity. I've been reminded at the beginning of this year that, your identity is just in Christ, right? So when we identify in a job or we identify as a mother or we identify in different ways, those are just titles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And those titles at any point in time can be taken away.
Yeah.
So you can lose your job, whether it's your situation or something happens to you or God forbid you're no longer here anymore. We could lose a child. We could lose our spouse, and we're not the title of spouse or mother or whatever, father, but we're still always identifying as being a child of God. So that has been a really weird dance to be
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not just a mom, I'm not just a wife, I'm not
Mhm.
just these things, but it comes back to the identity factor of like, I am a child of God
Mhm.
first,
Yeah.
no matter what it is.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
God, you've entrusted me with these beautiful gifts
Mhm.
and blessings, and they drive me nuts, and they don't sleep, and Isaiah doesn't eat. He's always on the phone,
Yeah.
but I'm obsessed with them, and I love them.
Yeah.
I'm so, so grateful for them. So I think
Yeah.
It's just always a lot for her.
in different times when
yeah.
things could have been taken away, there's been a really, really hard marriage season where the D word, divorce, was on the
Yeah.
table, and
Yeah.
it was something where this might have been an something, and I know I had to go through that because it was the Lord's reminder of like, if you don't take care of what I gave you, I can take it away.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Gives you a new level
oh
of
my
appreciation.
gosh, you talked about making him the water cup after your fight. I remember just being like in fights, like, okay, I'm just gonna make him dinner. He's not gonna eat it, Lord. He's not gonna eat it. And the Lord was just like, just make the dinner.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I would make the dinner, and I would just leave it out, and I would go upstairs, and I'd come downstairs, and I'd peek to see, and like the bowl's empty. I'm like, he ate my dinner. Yes, like it's just,
I won.
It's in
It's
that.
like
It's in
Santa with the
the.
cookies.
It's in the obedience. It's
Yeah.
just make him dinner. I
Yeah.
didn't say, but he said this, or he did this, or you acted this way. It's just make the dinner.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just go get him water. And then it's like, he's like, you made me dinner, even though, have you ever seen that picture where it's like the old couple and like, I think he's holding like the umbrella
and he's
yes,
pouty.
that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Where you just got to do it, and it doesn't
Yeah.
feel good, and you have to die to self. Well, we're supposed to do that every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So especially in marriage and in motherhood and entrepreneurship, even.
Yeah.
It's not like
That's great
you
perspective.
don't do it for you do it for us.
Yeah.
And
I
we
think
are grateful for it.
marriage gives you that like die to self too, and like not just I think kids bring on a whole new level because like they need you to live, so that's like a whole new level of it. But I always think about like entrepreneurs that are single, and I'm like, they probably don't have the same like characteristics and traits that married entrepreneurs have, because you go through a whole new level of like his face.
Daggone.
Daggone.
Is it urgent?
Tomato, daggum.
Dadgummit. Tell them that you're busy.
Daggone. It was my post on my story.
Zach,
alarm.
edit this.
Look at that.
What was it?
My story.
Oh.
The alarm to post on the story.
Yeah. So like, how so? Like kind of like, so like, I guess you talk about married entrepreneurs versus single entrepreneurs and their traits,
I don't know. I just feel like you learn to serve. You learn grit through marriage. Like that's literally how I learned.
You learn that it's not all about you. Because like
Exactly.
entrepreneurs sometimes can be self-motivated,
Yes.
but you have a different why as
Yeah.
a married entrepreneur. I want to hear from you guys because we're stepping into a season that you guys have been in.
Yeah.
And this is we talked about it at couples therapy the other night. It's a worry of ours. I know we're not supposed to worry. Being in business together.
Oh yeah.
How are
Yeah.
you business partners, and how can you also be a married couple?
We get this.
And the guidelines that has.
I mean, if we say we work together, it's hardly ever met with like, oh my gosh, that's great. It's more like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how?
It's met with skepticism.
And I
Yeah.
will say, I think there's a level of luck that we have that our personalities go very well together.
Yeah.
I'm very calm and I can meet situations. Like he's very high strung. And so I can look at him and be like, it's fine.
His
Like
little
bring him
smile.
down.
He's like, okay.
But I can see if we were both high strung, that it would be a lot harder.
Yeah.
I think you have to be super intentional. We had so many conversations before about like boundaries and
Yeah.
things like that and different roles. So like he takes care of things and I trust him with that. And then I take care of a whole different set of things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're like working together, but not, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like we have such different
Different roles.
tasks.
Job
Yeah.
descriptions.
So
yeah,
it
you
kind
each
of
have to-
feels like we have two separate jobs, but it all goes to the same thing, which I think is good.
Yeah.
You kind of do. That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
And so for me, first and foremost, and before I get into the granular details, it's so oversaid, but it's so true. You have to communicate, and you have to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
And you have to set expectations,
Mhm.
right? Of, well, after these hours, we're no longer business partners, we're husband and wife,
Yeah.
right?
Did
Yeah.
you hear that?
That's
Let's
hard.
Turn up his. Let's turn up his.
Yeah. And like, obviously, stuff
Called out.
stuff comes up,
Yeah.
right? And that's okay. But setting boundaries with clients,
Yeah.
with whoever you're facing with each other. Of
I'm pretty
like,
straightforward too. Like he'll start talking to you business and I'm like, I'm not talking about that
Yeah,
till tomorrow
you-
morning.
yeah,
like
you're
I'll
like,
just tell
I'm-
him
I'm
like,
just kinda
I'm
done
not-
with that.
I'm clocked.
I'm
off,
clocked out.
Yeah.
So,
so of communicating effectively through everything, setting expectations, outlining things, and obviously you don't know what you don't know, but as you get into that realm and as you are communicating about things, setting those expectations
Yeah.
as you go, because where issues arise is unmet expectations.
Did you have issues arise at first? Were there growing pains?
well, I was going to ask a question that kind of goes with that. I don't know. Is there ever a time when the business is going bad? I don't know if you've even experienced that. And then like you guys are still doing good though. Like, is it like synonymous? Like the business isn't doing that great. So then you guys aren't doing that great. Or is it just been like, cause I think it's
Ooh.
easy to be
That's a good question.
in a
Great
good
question.
marriage
Feed into
if
each
it's,
other.
if
Yeah.
everything's going great. But
Yeah.
when business is bad, are you guys still solid?
That's very good question. I think that so far we've been fortunate enough because a lot of our business is retainer based.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's a monthly recurring revenue.
Mhm.
And so far we've been blessed to have zero turnover,
Mhm.
That's amazing.
no turnover.
That's awesome.
But there has absolutely been the threat
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
turnover of like, oh, this client might fall off.
Mhm.
That's a sizable chunk of monthly income, right? What does that look like? Oh, that could be a little anxiety. That could be a little worry, all this kind of stuff. And although business hasn't been bad, so
Yeah.
to speak, there's been the concern.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think it's taken us of trusting each other, trusting the Lord,
Mhm.
but also realizing like, hey, in the event that this does happen, I have full confidence in us to go out
Yeah.
and reproduce.
because
That's so
of
cool.
this crap stage that you've been through.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
like, we'll figure it
That's
out.
really
We're
cool.
very innovative. Is that the right word?
That is the right
like
word.
we were just talking about the potential of like, oh, what would happen if we lost this client? And he was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I have this, and this lined up.
You have a wait
Like we,
list.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like we'll figure it out. That's just
Yeah.
how I like think about it now.
Yeah.
And I too, like I told him from the beginning, I'm like, I want our hands in multiple things. Like I don't want just to
Yeah.
have this business because
Yeah, you want to diversify.
that's how I think. I'm a worst case scenario. And I'm like, what if
Yeah.
social media like stops? I
Yeah.
need something else. And so I feel like that's where it's been better, like on my anxiety of like knowing he's getting into real estate and things like that. So like if something does happen to our business, I want him to have something else bringing in.
Right.
an
And
income.
at the end of the day, we're also diversifying through the business.
Yeah. That's
So,
helped a lot too.
So one of the things is we have a guy on our team that does websites, logo packages, things of that sort. So we're just finalizing our first client that we've ran through that of outsourcing the work to where we're not even having to do the work.
Yeah.
But, still making money from that. So now diversifying within the agency of not just, doing retainer based stuff, but now we can advertise this stream and see what that's like. And then also we
paid ads.
Yeah. We talked about possibly incorporating paid ads and then maybe doing like a one-time consulting fee for X amount of dollars. So if they don't want to go on retainer, but they just want the crash course, we'll sit down and we'll have like a day where we give you all the insights and teach you for a one-time X amount of dollars. So, cool. So diversifying within the agency, but then also, the real estate, the podcast, all that kind of stuff of really trying to insulate ourselves.
So you're outsourcing something. I was going to say, is there a Z&T agency employee on the rise?
In the works.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
like, no, it's just us forever.
Well,
me and you, babe.
That's right.
So that's going to be crazy because like you're going to be doing business together, managing a person together, managing other businesses together. I don't know. I could see how people would think that puts strain on your marriage.
I honestly think it is a God thing because I was so anxious before you joined to help because I created the business and then he was like, I'm going to help.
He's 10Xing.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Kind of exactly. Yeah. And so I was so anxious about it. And I remember your mom was like, she had the idea too. And she pulled him aside and was like, why don't you help Tawnee? Like her business is such a good concept, blah, blah. And I'm like, shut up. Like I can't do this.
You guys say like how you're yin and yang, like he's so big picture dreamer.
Yeah. And when you create something, you kind of have like my dad has his own business and he always says he like holds it so tightly with like his control. He doesn't want to give that up to anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's how I was of like, this is my thing. Like stay away. Like I know how to do it. You don't understand and kind of that kind of idea. And I remember being so anxious. I'm like, this is going to affect our marriage. I know it. Like I just had such a negative idea about it.
Are you still anxious? Like,
not
or is that still in the back of your mind at all?
No. And I think that shows that it is a God thing because I was like, all right, if this is the path that we're supposed to go down, I think that the Lord will meet me with like peace about it. And ever since you came on, I have not had one time where I second guessed it.
Well, I think one of the biggest things, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your thing was scared of scaling.
Yeah.
Because with obviously
which is like what you get excited about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but
yin and yang.
But when we're working with people like Spencer Maxwell, it's right in the comfort zone box.
Yeah.
Right. And so once we start adding new clients and all this kind of stuff that isn't named Spencer Maxwell,
it's an added pressure.
Because
with like me, like we're so transparent that
exactly.
It's like, who cares?
It's the comfort level, right?
Yeah.
So with scaling, there's a level of risk of like uncertainty and all that kind of stuff. But I think the thing that you didn't really think through was strengths and weaknesses, right? Where you had to, when you started dealing with a difficult client, that's all on you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When I come in and all clients moving forward, like if there are issues, all she does is what she's good at, the creative.
Yeah.
That's all she does.
Which is what I enjoy. Like anything else, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like the behind the scenes, like he takes care of everything.
Payment processors,
so
invoicing, like business meet, like.
Dude, that's my jam.
Really?
Yeah.
The numbers.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even want to hear it. Like it's not in my wheelhouse. And so the fact that he came in and he like takes, I don't even have to ask. He just does it all. And I'm like, and
you
I
guys
get
just
it.
bounce really well.
I was going to say, I do want to applaud you because it's not even just like, oh, you have to trust each other. Like you can feel the trust.
Yeah.
And I'm not even like a client. I know I'm a friend, but you can feel the trust and the communication.
Oh, Zach's got it.
It's been like a really breath of fresh air to hear that story in the beginning because like truly so many years down the road, like from the outside, we only see what we can see.
Exactly.
For sure.
And to see like, okay, look at their success. They had a happy marriage and that must be nice type thing. But then you're like, you have no idea how hard it was. Like and the heaviness of it and everything. So
and everybody has a
like
story.
Really strong. Yeah.
Like if you talk to, I'm sure if you talk to anyone who's been married or been an entrepreneur, like everybody has a story. You don't just magically get there. And I think honestly, when I think about specifically marriage, I'm like, if you've had it perfect the entire time, I think
There's an
that's a
issue.
red flag.
That is a red flag.
Or it's coming.
It's coming.
No, it's a
Or
red
it's not a
flag.
godly marriage.
Right.
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
but
That's true.
I think it is a red flag because there's no human relationships where there's zero conflict.
Yeah.
So if it's nothing,
Yeah.
it could be.
Well, I told
Yeah.
him, we had a conversation once, and I was like, you should be scared when I stop caring.
Yeah.
If I don't fight with you and I don't talk to you and I'm just living my life, and that's what I think people like say, like the roommate phase. We're not even like, we haven't really went through that, but like if you don't fight, like I think that's when there's an issue, you know, because you're just keeping everything inside and it's just resenting and you like don't have any, like that just means you don't care.
Or if you just detach.
Yeah.
You're like, whatever.
I think that's when
You
it's
know?
like, oh, that's a lot of
when you become indifferent.
Yes, I think that's scary.
I think that's scarier.
I think it's scarier too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to fight well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that like
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah,
You fight
like-
well.
you can fight with anyone. Like I fight with my parents, I fight with my sister, I fight with you. Like anyone you care about, you're going to disagree.
Yeah.
But it's like learning, and I think that it goes hand in hand with business too.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna have clients that I disagree with, so I need to learn how to communicate with them effectively.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's all about communication.
All about communication.
Mhm.
And then from there, once you communicate effectively, you can just kind of like get into the granular details of like, hey, Stephanie's good at this. She's good with the numbers.
Yeah.
She's good at, the processes, all that kind of stuff. Spencer's good with relationship building and being the people person and being the person that's driving traffic to the business, right? And once you've communicated those things, you can work with your strengths and your weaknesses and your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you guys have a great dynamic as well of both of your strengths aren't the same and both your weaknesses aren't the same.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's another,
It's a perfect match.
another great match. So, and when people talk about being in business together, and you want to do that, like it can absolutely be done.
Mhm.
And can be a great thing for your marriage.
Mhm.
Our biggest hang up with it is that that's what our marriage is going to become.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You have to set boundaries.
I know.
You
So
have to
that's
set
why I asked that,
boundaries.
because it's like I don't see an issue with us trusting each other,
Yeah.
which is like one of the biggest things.
You might be
I
like
see the
great,
boundaries.
coworkers, but then
Yeah.
it's like, well, what if you are just great coworkers?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
We've been
blend.
fortunate enough to be able to work 2 jobs now together.
Yeah.
And now a 3rd job, which would be our own company.
Mhm.
So, I think we're really good at setting aside, crap, even if we might be arguing or something.
Yeah.
To take care of business. And so that's why, because we don't get that much time alone
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
we are parents.
Mhm.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
We've got little ones and a lot of just different ventures going on. So I think
Mhm.
my concern has been like, what if all we do when we're alone is talk business? And what if we only do this and that? And I mean, you're just proving the point that we need to set boundaries.
Yeah,
and-
that's why I asked that question, because like I said, it's a season we're going into.
Yeah.
I know
But, like-
it's, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Tony.
I know it's so cringy, but like, I really think a big thing for us is like love languages.
Yeah.
And like, we still, I think we are in the best spot we've ever been. And we're so like, we like cuddle on the couch and like flirt with each other. And I think that like kind of separates, like, you're not just my business partner. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love you. Like, I'm affectionate with you. And I think
Yeah.
that that's where you get, when you stop being like that and you stop like focusing on each other's love language and you just start only talking about business.
Yeah.
I think
And I
that's
think
where
it's
it can
just
go
about
bad.
each other not wanting just the business part. Like
Yeah.
you want
Right.
to
Yeah.
be pursued, and you want to pursue one another.
Yeah.
So I think,
And-
yeah.
In terms of practical advice, if you can, which based on the conversations that we've had, I think that you can, because you're going to be running like the candid contractors, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to be doing the real estate stuff.
Mhm.
So, be intentional about setting different roles
Yeah.
and like creating the space that you need to throughout the day. So that way you're working on your task. You're working on your
Yeah.
task
Mhm.
versus everything's being together all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that way, when the day ends and we set the boundary after 7 o'clock,
Mhm.
we're no longer on the clock. How was your day? What did
Yeah.
you do? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because you don't know exactly
Yeah.
what, you know what I mean?
That's true.
Because you were working with candid contractors, you had stuff
Yeah.
coming up, you were out at, showings, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And once you set that line, it's like, How was
it's
your
like
day?
exciting to
You know what I
mean?
hear. Yeah. And it's like, I think that we in the beginning were like, let's be so intentional. Let's go get coffee. Like
Aw.
every Monday morning, let's go to a coffee shop. And that
Yep.
was like our thing. And I was like, you know what? Now we like we didn't even have a conversation. We just like stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it was because we were trying to bring both together. Like we were like, let's sit down together and work on our separate roles. And it's like now we both are just so good about like, we see each other all the time. I mean, we both work from home.
Yeah.
We don't have kids. So like we're together constantly.
Constantly.
So it's
So
like,
space is good.
I'm like, we don't need to grab coffee together
No.
about work. We'll
No.
go on the weekend and grab a coffee for fun, but like
Yeah.
we don't have to try to force it and like
Yeah.
try to get everything done together. Let's separate it. And
Yep.
even now, like you just go about your day and do your thing. I go about my day and do mine. It's kind of
sure.
like we work separate jobs.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Having a divide
really
yet
cool.
still working together.
Yep. Yep.
You know, once again, just kind of managing those job descriptions. And
For sure.
there's also another business that I want to talk about as far as like, you know,
Dun, dun,
we
dun.
we call it a business, but
I
like
don't know what's coming.
households.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like, because the other night I liked how Steph put it, you know, when we were talking about like, what is her role going to be? And she's like, no, you know what? This is my business.
Mhm.
These children in this household.
Yeah.
And so managing a household as a woman, right? I kind of feel like men, we're gone, we're working,
Yeah.
you know, we're putting food on the table, we're providing, but women kind of set the culture
Yeah.
in the house, I feel like,
Period.
you know? So I guess hearing from both of you, I don't know if you guys have thought about this, but like, how do you want to manage that business? You know, what are kind of like some non-negotiables, some core values that you think about when you hear that you set the tone for your household?
That's
So-
such a heavy
Yeah.
It's a heavy question. Yeah.
I feel like because we don't have kids, I think, and we are business partners, we are very much a team. And like, we don't really stick to any specific roles at all. I mean, he does his own laundry. I do my own laundry. We both clean. We both,
Yeah.
you know, I cook and he clean. Like we just, I don't know. We work more together. It's like, there's not specific roles,
Yep.
but I do always think about like when we have kids, I just
Mhm.
wonder how that's going to change us because I know like, you know, I'm going to probably be with the baby a lot more. And like, is that going to affect business? Is that going to affect the household? Like, I have no idea. And so I think that like for years, I mean, since I quit Power Ad, I quit and started my own business thinking of being a mom. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to set myself up so that when I'm a mom, I can be a mom and I don't have to go to an office.
And that's why we're looking to hire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I
To
always
alleviate.
want to be
Yeah.
involved. I want to
Yeah.
be involved.
For
I
sure.
I'm like I said, have a hard time like just like giving up control of it. And I want to be so involved, but I do know like I know me, and I'm like when I have a baby, I know I'm gonna be so like consumed mentally, physically, emotionally. And so I'm like, we just are very intentional now about we talk about it constantly.
Yeah.
And we aren't even like trying to get pregnant or anything, but
Right.
we're like, we know that this might be hard of
Right.
like trying to figure out how to balance these roles.
And Steph, before you jump in real quick, obviously the question was directed towards them, but this might be a little bit controversial. And obviously there are natural gender roles, especially with, you know, being a mom, being a dad. Like there's just a natural gender roles that are involved with that we aren't dealing with right now.
Mhm.
So I can only speak on this behalf, but I'm not overly into like traditional gender roles. I'm more into teamwork.
Mhm.
And there's times where like if you cook dinner, like I'll see that your plate's out. I'll go pick it up and wash
Yeah.
it, right?
Mhm.
Things of that sort versus
That's how
like
we are too.
yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. And almost taking the approach of like, hey, like let's just run this thing as a team. Like if stuff needs done, let's tackle it together.
Mhm.
And obviously there are just natural things that like she kind of takes care of more. Like she cooks a lot more than I can't cook worth a lick, right?
Yeah.
But so
That's so nice.
cooking excluded, which I am trying to get better at
Yeah,
too.
yes.
Because crock pot recipes. Anyhow, that's different. But just kind of like focusing on like, you know, sometimes like it's 80-20 and you know she's giving the 80 and I'm giving the 20, and sometimes it's 60-40 and sometimes it's 50-50.
That's
But
the balance. You talk a
For
lot
sure.
about that.
and just knowing that like there are things that need to be done.
Mhm.
So, you know, based on your day, if you're busy, if you've been gone all day doing this, I know that I'm going to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
You know what
if
I mean?
you're at 40, she needs to be at 60 and
So
vice versa.
taking more of that approach right now as not being parents yet.
Yeah. And we're very aware. Like we both talk about it. Like we have so much time and like that's a gift. Like we see all of our friends having kids and we're like, we know that like right now we're not living reality. Like
For
when
sure.
we have kids, it's all, this whole thing is going to get just like thrown to the side and probably switched up.
Right.
But
to a certain degree, I feel like we can still apply some of these same
yeah.
principles,
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure.
So-
You guys have multiple businesses that you're running.
For sure.
That you know, the attention, whether my attention's towards a child or your attention's towards a business person, you
Right.
know, a client that you have to tend to. It
Mhm.
has
For sure.
to be tended to.
Yeah.
So.
And for me, it's not fair. And we've had this conversation. It's not fair because if she's also an entrepreneur, she's also co-owner in the business. She's also going to be working some in the business based hopefully on as little or as much as she wants. But I cannot expect her to work in the business, be mom, clean the house, make dinner, all this kind of stuff, because she's not just strictly being a stay-at-home mom.
Mhm.
Like she's also contributing on that front. So she can't do everything by herself. So if she's working in some capacity in the agency and stuff, I need to step up.
Mhm.
I need to help. I need to, if there's times where you're gone and you're taking care of Junior and I need to make dinner, like that's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
And so just kind of taking that teamwork approach versus just like stereotypical, you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
Just kind of my
Which
thoughts.
I think works for some people. Like I think it works great for a lot of people.
Are you looking to buy, sell, or invest? Be sure to use a Maxwell Group at NavX Realty, where your dream is our passion. The Maxwell Group takes pride in client relationships and experiences. We utilize our knowledge, our love for the industry, and our extensive network to handle your life's biggest investment. Call or text Spencer Maxwell at 937-572-5382.
But I think for us, like we both we've done that from the beginning of like splitting things and not just like putting like, okay, this is your chore and this is your chore. Like
Not
it's
putting
kind
roles
of
on each other.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier when you have a husband that's willing.
Yes, for sure.
The willingness definitely is a thing. I think just how do I want to run the household? I mean, I think, well, when I think about like traditional, like you say, traditionally how the house is, it needs to be, the woman does X, Y, and Z. The dad comes home and he just kicks up and he has a beer and she expects, that's not healthy anytime. Back then, now, whatever. I do love the teamwork approach. We do that with parenthood a lot. I think in the beginning it was like, well, I changed 3 diapers. How many have you changed today? And you keep track. Because you, again, it's the dying to self. Now, when I think about that question, I think just really honestly, I want to run the household biblically. So what does that mean? You know, it's not just, oh, because God wants you to do this. Like, and we have it to where I was going to read Proverbs 31 and we still kind of can, but there truly is like a job description in basically in the word. And it has all things like what you as a wife, it says a wife first. It's Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. And I think it's not even till the 18th or the 28th verse that talks about a child. Oh, I saw that. He's like, don't leave me hanging.
It turned the other way. I was like,
it doesn't even talk about children until way later in the verses, but it just says all the things like how one thing that I really struggled with in the beginning, but it says that she, speaking about a wife, she gets up before, or she gets up while it's still night. And I'm like, why do I got to get up? Like, why is it me? Like, I'm tired too, you know? But there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why, you know, she works, she has strong arms for her tasks. The whole thing.
She sets the tone.
She sets the tone for your household. She gets up and she makes, you know, food, and it talks about like maidservants and stuff too, which isn't applicable, but it just has this whole list of verbs, actions that you're supposed to do. It's not, oh, I'm a wife and now you take care of everything. And so I'll just be here looking pretty and doing whatever, you know, because it even said that basically that beauty fades, but that a woman who fears the Lord should be praised. And there'll be times that I'm like in the garage doing a workout and I'm like, I should be praised. And my arms are strong and I am ready to this, because I'll just be sitting there listening to scripture, because I think society says, you know what, you don't need a man.
Yeah.
And you can do it on your own, and you don't need this and you don't need that. And society wants you to be separate from your husband.
Right.
Yeah.
And now that doesn't mean if you have a husband that says, sit down, shut up, and make me food, that is still wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a willing husband that wants to love you, going back to the love and respect thing, it says that, you know, your husband should love you like Christ loved the church.
Mm-hmm.
He's to love you. It doesn't say that wives are to love their husbands, because we already do. We talked about, I just love you so much.
Natural.
I'll do everything for you. But sometimes if there's, you know, pride or an ego or an unhealthy version of your husband, it's hard to respect that. But it doesn't say respect him if he's good to you, or respect him if he's this. It says just respect your husband.
Right.
So you have to be like, okay, he's a turd, I'm gonna make him dinner. He's gotta do this.
Yeah.
And then maybe he softens, maybe he doesn't. Maybe you guys have a great marriage months down the road. Maybe it's 10 years down the road and something happens. It's never easy. But I think I want to run my household biblically, which isn't easy. And I don't think the Lord's going to give me this amazing blessing of a husband and children in a household, and he's going to be like, figure it out. I think he's going to be with me in it and tell me how to do it and humble me when I'm not doing good. One of the things in Proverbs 31 was talking about how she doesn't eat the bread of idleness. So we're supposed to work hard too. That might be at, you know, your own business. That might be a big corporation. That might be being a stay-at-home mom. But you don't eat the bread of idleness. You're up, you're working hard, you're taking care of them, you care, you die to self, and you care for the other people. So it's been really difficult. I've gotten to a place where, you know, the person that has really helped me is the podcast you showed me. Or
Asked for Me in My House.
Yeah, Melena,
I love her. Yeah. She's the girl that I always talk about.
Yeah.
And she talks a lot about that kind of stuff. And it's really just Christ-centered and biblical and not secular, as far as, you know, you're supposed to do this, even down to like what she wears and stuff is just really modest and everything, and bring glory to your husband because he's respected at the city gates and all. It says all this stuff within the scripture. So I think just focusing on, it's not about you. It's about him.
That's what I was going to bring up too, is like you're really good at this and you're really good at this, but society goes against it, is surrendering to your husbands, submitting to your husbands. And so kind of like, that's where I was like hoping we would get to, is like, you know, as far as like you guys and how your mindsets are for your household, is it's submitting to your husband and trusting. And I just think that's really cool. It's really cool to see it. And it's not something we hold lightly. Like that is like, we could easily crush that, but we take that very.
We do. And for that, like, I want to be straight up. We best be giving you something to submit to.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
easier.
Right. And something that was coming to my mind as you were talking about running a biblical household, and, you know, the list of verbs that are in the Bible, of all this kind of stuff. What came to my mind is why it's so important to be equally yoked, right?
Yeah.
Because just as much as there is a list for women, there is a list for men. And like, for you to be able to fulfill all that stuff and be like Christ-led and all that, like, the man needs to be doing that exact same stuff in regard to what is outlined for him biblically for him. Right. And that's why that's so important. Because that would be very tough if you're not equally yoked, and
I can't imagine.
And you're doing these types of things and your husband is kind of a POS.
I think people like take so much offense to that verse, and just the word submit is just so against.
It's got a negative connotation to it.
And I understand why. I completely get it, because a lot of times the men who are preaching that are ones that I would not submit to.
Yeah.
You know, it's the men that have pride and ego and they're like, submit to me. You know, I'm like, I think that God sees the full picture, and he's like, when you love your wife, like he loved the church, the woman's going to want to submit. You know, it's not, it doesn't come from a place of like power or authority. You, like you said, it's like a partnership, it's teamwork, and
100%.
I submit to you, you love me, and we make decisions together too. It's not like you tell me we're doing this and that's the final say, you know. It's like before he makes any decision, even like plans for the weekend, he comes to me and he's like, okay, like what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah.
And it's like that he doesn't act like almighty and authoritative or anything like that. And I think that's really important.
It's the love and the
It is.
respect. It's the healthy balance. It's the surrender and the submissiveness of the wife and giving her something. Yeah. It's a phenomenal culture that builds.
Yeah.
Right.
It takes a long time to get there.
I do think
Because it's a
Yeah.
mentality.
taken out of
It's a mentality.
context a lot, and it gets taken out of context in society because I think people think they're saying, "Oh, women submit to men," and it's not women. It's in the what is it? And it's within the context of a wife and a husband.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to submit to some like Joe Schmo that I don't know that's disrespecting me and doing whatever. I don't have that. What's the word?
Requirement.
Yeah, to do
Yeah.
that to you. I
Right.
have the requirement to do that to my husband. And
obligation,
if you
yeah.
don't, if I don't want to submit to the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, then there are obviously deeper issues you need to work on. But
Right.
this is a person you love more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be able, and there's many times where he'll humble himself, and he'll be like, okay, yep, and not even like you're right, because I think early on in marriage, it's like a you're right or I'm right or I want to be heard or you're heard.
Yeah.
It's like a defeating thing, and it's like, okay, well, what if I defeat him or he defeats me? What's the outcome of that? Then you just have a defeated wife,
Right.
or you have a defeated husband, to where it's like, well, we didn't really get anywhere, you just won.
Yeah.
Now versus fighting well and getting to a resolution that's good for all parties and with our children, and our children sees when we argue. Isaiah's to the age where he knows if something's wrong. So just know, and then he repeats everything. I was telling him about a situation today where he gets the, even with like our dog. Like, no, Zeke, or Zeke, want a treat? Come here, Zeke.
Yeah, he just
Like,
repeats. But
it's just really cool. But to know that you're supposed to submit to your husband, not to just men in general. That's not.
I feel like
it is.
I always tell you this. I think like when people say you become one when you get married.
Yeah.
I am like, I don't think that's true. I mean, physically, yes, but I don't think it's just true because it's like it takes a long time to become one. It took us 3 years.
It's a process.
It doesn't
happen
and I
immediately.
think that like the way it was talked about in the church, I thought like, I say I do and we're one and I feel it and we're living that way and we communicate that way. And it's like, it took 3 years to become one, where I'm like, now I feel like we're one. We are Zach and Tawnee, where before it was like, I did not feel that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of weight that women hold. Like I said, they build a culture for the house. And it's like, I don't know if you have this, but like sometimes if you come home to an angry or impatient wife, then that can determine the rest of your day.
Yeah.
I hate that women have to bear that weight, but also it's like, seriously, like if I come home to a loving wife, it just makes me like, if I just get shown a little bit of affection from her as soon as I walk through the door, I'm just like, oh yes, like I will run through a brick wall.
The goal is to have him want to be home, to be excited that like daddy's home, and they just drop all their toys and they go to the front door, and that's created.
Yeah, she creates the culture of the house.
Caught, not taught.
Caught, not taught.
Something that we have to do. And it is, especially early in my marriage, more frequently. It was just like ready for you to come home so I could tell you everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't ready to be. Marriage for me was not easy. Motherhood has been like just natural. You just snap into it. So becoming a wife was a different story. And to realize that, sometimes I'm like, that's not fair. Why do I have to do this? Yeah. But I do. Like, it's not, for me, it's not my choice. I didn't make that role, but it is my role. It is my title. So I have to suck it up sometimes when I have a bad day.
That's marriage wrapped up in one sentence.
Get
just
excited,
suck it up.
like, daddy's home, let's go. And other days it really is joyful because we're just so excited for him to be home.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just like building a culture of surrender, sacrifice, but all, in a good, healthy, biblical fashion. So like women, man, you guys hold so much weight when it comes to the household.
Absolutely. And I want to make one last disclaimer of like when we were talking about the Smith thing, all that kind of stuff, of we are equal value.
Yes.
Like she is just as important.
Yes.
In the marriage as I am. So people get the whole thing twisted of submission of like, oh, the man is more valuable, because no, like you are every bit as valuable as we are. It's just different roles that we play.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that disclaimer.
Yeah.
We've been running for a while.
How
Yeah.
long has it been?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah. So is there anything else that Spence, you ladies wanted to get off your chest real quick before we finished up?
I love Jesus.
Me
Yeah,
too.
well,
all I
it's,
got.
we have this scripture here, right? Like just to kind of wrap all this together, you know, we kind of, you know, took some marriage scriptures like 2 Corinthians 6:14, you know, talking about being equally yoked, like Zach touched about, you know, it's like, well, you can't expect your wife to submit to you if you don't know Christ and if you aren't doing enough for her as well. And then we have 1 Peter 3, you know, verse 7, showing honor to your woman.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
And then the Proverbs 31:10 that Steph brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
an excellent wife is more precious than jewels.
So cute.
Yes, she
Yeah.
is. I was going to read all of it, and I was like, no, it's fine.
And then Colossians 3:18, you know, wives submit to your husbands. Once again, you know, we don't want to get canceled for that, but you know, I think that's a thing that people wrestle with nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you girls had to wrestle with it for a while before it actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just really cool to kind of hear about, like, submit, surrender biblically, you know, like how you want to run your household and stuff like that. So no, good stuff, man. It was really cool to hear your guys' struggles, you know, and the balance that you have with business, marriage, and just kind of, you hear your core values as we've talked, you know, and it's just all very grounded, you know. So yeah, good stuff. You guys got anything else?
I got some good news that if this is something that you all enjoyed, hopefully, if they're willing, Tawn and Steph will be frequent guests, and we'll be able to talk a little. Just kidding. If you liked it, then you better hit replay because it's a one time only. No, just kidding. But yeah,
good stuff. Yeah,
Love
good to
y'all.
hear each other's
Fantastic.
stories.
Thanks,
And
guys. This was fun.
stay tuned.
Your house is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Peace.